welcome to another installment of Judgmental AF. I'm your host, Kent Black, and man, gotta miss you guys. If you listen to the update on YouTube video that I posted, great, you know what's going on, you know you're up to date, you're clued in, fantastic. But if you haven't, quick recap, no longer doing a completely structured show anymore, just doing the audio version now, and also, episodes are going to be released whenever I fucking feel like it, because honestly, the schedule was a little too much, even though it wasn't very hard at all. So, let's just jump into it. Our topic today is Black fatherhood. Now, this is a conversation about fatherhood in general, so if you're not Black, completely okay. You still join in the conversation. It's not going to be very much, only like one or two points that you might not be able to understand or relate to. But in modern times, I'm pretty sure there are some concerns that you have that I don't necessarily relate to. And that's A-okay, guys. So let's get into this conversation about fatherhood, because if you might be following my social media, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, here's an update. I have a kid on the way. Little baby girl. She's going to be born in like a couple months around November. And honestly, this whole thing about fatherhood, I've talked about it for so many years, with so many different people and so many exes, and it's going to be here. I can't lie, man. I got some fears, man. I'm a little scared, just a little bit. But, it's just, lately I've just been feeling like a little bit of unease about how I feel about it, not necessarily how I feel about having a kid or that. I'm ecstatic for that part. But my fear is pretty much rooted in, I don't know, I feel like I'm supposed to be adjusting and getting used to the idea of having another person in the house, me and my wife, we had a roommate for a little bit, and honestly, the adjustment to having a chick in the house that wasn't related to us wasn't really that deep. I mean, it was a little awkward at times, but that's just because me and her didn't want anyone to misconstrue anything about anything going on, aka nothing was happening. But I think it's just the idea of an actual baby being in the house, and my house is gonna go from being for the most part clean to having toys and bottles thrown everywhere and baby stuff everywhere, instead of just being in that one room that we set up for her. And then there's also exactly what is a good father. I don't honestly know how to exactly define it. Every definition that I've seen, heard of, or been given by anybody is pretty much just a guy who's there. And if all you have to be a good dad is be a guy who's there, then a bunch of random people in my life have been good fathers to me because they've just been there. I think that's not a sufficient enough decision, conversation piece, And I don't want my fatherhood to just be rooted in, I pay the bills, I buy you food, I buy you toys, therefore I am a good father. I don't want my fatherhood to be relegated to just, he's the guy you go get money from. Do it. And since it's a little girl, all you have to do is say please and give the puppy dog eyes, and he'll pretty much do what you want. I don't want that. I don't want that at all. That sounds terrible. It doesn't sound like a good fucking father to me. And what makes it worse, I've basically been told since I was 17 years old that I make a good dad. And I guess I've seen it, but at the same time, I've never fully understood why. Even when I worked with kids, the boys that I worked with, at least the youngest ones, would randomly be hey, Mr. Kent, do you have any kids? I was like, nah, fam. I don't want none of that. Nah, fam, none of that. And it was just yo, You seem like you make a good dad. Like, I think you make a really good dad. I don't know what that means. And it felt weird coming from this kid that I was fucking overseeing. And I can sincerely say every time it was met with, you don't go mind your business somewhere, go sit down. Get out of my face. I don't know what you're talking about. Be a good dad. But, yeah, I'm really concerned, especially in like modern times, because the definitions of what exactly would make a good dad, I question heavily, because it goes against like a lot of things that I've heard essentially suggest that being a conservative parent makes you a good parent, particularly for girls, and being a liberal parent makes you a good parent, particularly for boys. And to be honest, I don't think that's true or accurate. And I think that when it comes to raising your kids, or at the very least, what I'm looking at is what might make me a good father, is addressing my children, where like it's starting out as one, but later on down the line, maybe we'll have that second kid. Maybe we'll have that third kid. Maybe one of my exes will come out the woodwork and 15 years later be like, hey, so I did a thing and never told you, and here you go. And now I'm a father to the stranger, and I have to navigate that. That's gonna suck. But, you know, I'm just curious. I think that ultimately when it comes to being a good father, it's just about catering to the needs of each individual child, you know, trying to set an example of what I should be and what they potentially could be. I think that'd be the best way to go, because I think I had a good father figure in my household. I'd say it was a fantastic father figure. But I can honestly say that I turned out absolutely nothing like him. Well, I'm not going to say absolutely nothing, but our similar traits don't really extend that far, like, into what we're both into like what we both really like just do, into like how we approach people. I don't think that either of us are really similar in that format. And honestly, I think maybe that's what it means to be a good father. You know, to just do the best you can for your kids, and then not trying to come at them for not turning out like you. In terms of personality, in terms of job choice, in terms of options. Like, maybe that's what it means. And maybe it just means to let yourself and your kids make mistakes. And I also have the fear of, like, you know, doing what's both right for me and right for my kid. Because, you know, when we watch TV and we see media and stuff, we see a lot of fathers out there, and we see a lot of parents, and dads are like either always working or don't have a job. There's very little in between, and the ones that are in between don't have a lot of money, so therefore like they struggle a lot, and they just try to smile for their kids. And the dad that struggles is like not really doing that great for his marriage, because he's struggling and trying to like not do things and not be stressed in front of the kid. They end up being like good dads, but like very mid-tier husbands. And the dads that do follow their careers end up being like portrayed, at the very least, as pretty absentee fathers. Like, they're doing what they think is best for their family by, you know, trying to build as much wealth and resources as possible for their family. But because they're not actually there for their kids look at them as like, yeah, he's alright. I guess he didn't beat me. And that's their pretty practical view of their father. And it's just a lot, man. It's just a lot when we think about fatherhood, especially when you don't have kids, and especially like when you're trying to raise your kids and you don't really know how they're going to react to things. And that's what I mean by doing what's right for me and what's right for the kid. Because when we think about things like the way we address kids, the way we respond to certain things, it might be right for us that we respond to things in certain ways. But lo and behold, like, that way we responded may actually end up traumatizing our child and causing later on issues. Because ultimately, my goal for being a dad is to not be a reason, the very least, is to not be a topic that my child goes to therapy for. And at least, unless the topic is my untimely demise. I'm okay with my kid going to therapy for me dying. Sure, sounds good. But anything else, I don't think my kid should have to go to therapy for that. I would hope that we resolve those issues and those feelings in the moment, and I just try to avoid making them feel like they are wrong or bad for doing things that they naturally like and want to do. And then we also come to the issue of figuring out belief systems. You know, what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior? My definition of unacceptable and acceptable behavior is different from my parents' definition, and is different from my grandparents' definition. And to be honest, it's probably different from my friends too. Like, I think that a lot of things are acceptable, and then it honestly just becomes an issue of how old is the person that we're referencing. Like, and like, if we, like, let's take something modern, a modern issue, which is a non-issue to me whatsoever. The song WAP by Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B. That, to me, is an acceptable song. Simple as that, full stop. I don't care. If you think that it sets a bad example for kids, well then I hope you never listened to Biggie Smalls or Tupac growing up, because that wasn't a very good example for you when you were growing up. Because, trust me, I grew up listening to hardcore DMX, Ludacris, like, fully explicit lyrics. I remember being in high school talking about you gonna suck it or not. Like, I can sincerely say, growing up, I didn't become a deviant. I didn't become hyper aggressive towards people. Not that aggressive towards people. And I didn't grow up to, like, gang bang and shoot people for the slightest disagreements with me. And I think that, you know, if you think that it's unacceptable song for your child to hear, then it becomes an issue of don't listen to the music around your kid. You know? Like, I always think back to an interview that Camron did back in, like, late 2000s. I think it might have been 2008, when he went on Fox News and he was asked a question by an anchor where the person asked him how he felt about people saying that his music wasn't very appropriate for children and that he wasn't being a good role model. And his response was to look the person dead in the face and go, well, I shouldn't be a role model to your children, and it's not my responsibility to raise your kids. It's your responsibility. If your kids are listening to my music and you don't want them to, you need to take care of that. Like, that has nothing to do with me. Like, it's not my business. It's not my job to make music so that your kids can have something to listen to. I make music that I would like to listen to, and I make music that my fans would like to listen to. And if those fans just so happen to be young people or the children, well, then that sounds like a parental problem that needs to be fixed, not a me problem that I need to fix. Now, I'm paraphrasing on the response, but that was basically the gist of what it was. And that always stuck with me, because I think that when we live in a society where we have so many things and we have so many advantages to people all over the world, that we tend to look for things to complain about. And anything that make your life as a parent easier, quote unquote, is what you're gonna complain about. And I think that's why, like, moms and parents and other people complain about, like, video games and stuff being available to children, even though the parent has to be the one to buy the game. Like, you can't just go up to a GameStop counter and your 5-year-old purchased Grand Theft Auto. You had to buy the game, and if you bought the game without looking up what Grand Theft Auto was, well, that makes you a dumbass. Don't come at the game developers for making such a violent and graphic game. Like, ask yourself, why didn't you think to even look up what the game was about and what you did in the game? Why didn't you think to play the game first before your kid played the game? And just, if you would have, within the first 15, 20 minutes, you would have seen, man, this game is not very appropriate for kids. And then we also have to leverage, like, finding our kids' religion, because I hold different belief systems than their mother does. Only slightly. Not really that much different, honestly. But I hold different beliefs than her, and most importantly, I don't want to push a belief onto my kid. I think that if my child grows up to be Christian, like myself, that'd be great. But if they also grew up to be Muslim or Buddhist, or maybe they grow up to be a Scientologist. I hope they don't grow up to be a Scientologist. But and find their own religion. We've talked about that and how our kids should be exposed to these different varying religions. And I know that, honestly, that topic in itself is not popular amongst a lot of kids, or a lot of parents rather, particularly in the South, because parents want their kids to learn their religion, and because their religion is the truth. I mean, it works for them, so why shouldn't it work for you? And unfortunately, I feel like that kind of creates a divide, because if your kids grow up and don't want to practice that religion, don't believe as you do, you sort of create a distance between you and the kid, so that you don't really know necessarily how to address things, maybe. And maybe, like, the conversion in religion, you might see as a rejection of you and your beliefs. And I don't think that it's literally always so personal as, like, I don't want to be the religion that you are because of you. You know what I mean? And to be completely honest, I'm not going to say that I figured this whole religion thing out. So if I haven't figured it out, what reason do I have to believe that my kid is going to, like, figure it out before they're an actual adult? So, you know, those things run through my head a lot, especially considering the fact that I have a really big church family. So I know that when they go spend time with their grandma and they go spend time with, like, family members, they will be going to church events. And I don't have a problem with that. Honestly, I kind of prefer it. It gives a little bit of structure and, honestly, discipline to stay quiet and not move as a child in a public place. It starts giving you some practice outside of school. But I don't know. I see benefits in religion and raising your kids, and I can also see some issues that may arise, but it's one of those bridges that you just cross when you get there. You know what I mean? And then we get to the, like, specifically black portion of my concerns, where we talk about, like, being black. What does it mean to be black? How society expects you to behave as a black person, particularly a black young woman, and how society sort of expects you to behave, how society wants you to behave. And honestly, it's only recently that I've really delved into how this has impacted me on a personal level. Because if you've met me, you would know that one of the most common things that people tell me, normally white people, but I've heard it from black people and non-whites as well, say that I'm basically an Oreo, or I don't really talk black. And I get really annoyed by that statement. And I always respond the same way. Well, how do black people talk? Do black people not use English? Like, am I speaking a language that is foreign to myself? Because generally the dialect of English that people believe that black people use is really just Southern. It's just a poor Southern person. That's all it is. And if you lived in a poor Southern area, you would know that. I know. I grew up in a poor Southern area. That's where black kids would ask me, like, why do you talk like that? Like, why do you talk like a white person? And I just have to I had to look at them and say, I talk like I have an education. Like, simple as that. I talk proper English. I don't use the dialect of this area. Simple as that. And that's probably the reason why people believe that I'm from up north, is that my speech patterns don't necessarily match someone from the state of Virginia from a rural area. I mean, sometimes it comes out, but that's what it is. And I want my kid, even though I've always been concerned with not giving the impression of being the typical black stereotype my entire life, because that was sort of drilled into me as a kid on others. And honestly, it's not so much that I don't like the way I behave, but at the same time, I know that I honestly appreciate when I look at a person who can simply behave as they are. You know what I mean? I've seen so many black women and black men as well who can simply be themselves, and that when they go out in corporate America, yeah, you have to code switch, but honestly, for the most part, with the exception of like business meetings and whatever, because you know you have to do what you have to do to make money, they don't really change up how they behave, and they don't change who they are. Like, they'll give you the same side eyes as they would on the street in the office if you decide to talk out of turn. You know, they'll go off on you just the same. And I've honestly appreciated that. So even though, oddly enough, I grew up trying my best not to conform to others, and that was, oddly enough, that wasn't how I was necessarily raised. It just was me. I just don't like doing what other people are doing. Simple as that. I want to make sure that I raise my kids to know that they don't have to conform. Like, if you want to talk the way you want to talk, then there are two things that you have to accept. A, you have to accept people's responses to the way that you're speaking and behaving. And the other part is to be unapologetically yourself. Simple as that. And to me, being unapologetically black means being unapologetically yourself. That means that you can have whatever accent that you want to have. That means you can talk as proper as you want. It means you can be as aggressive, non-confrontational, and whatever is natural to you. That's what you need to do. Full stop. Don't let other people and other people's beliefs impact your behavior unless it's going to make you money. In which case, go ahead and change up so you can get that bag. Simple as that. Then, you know, because honestly, I have taken up the stance that we need to reject the good immigrant model that has been pushed down our throats since before I was born. Because quite frankly, I don't know if you know this or not, black people aren't immigrants. We're not. We're Americans. We're born here. Your family's been here for over 100 years. Guess what, nigga? You ain't from that other place. You from here now. Like, your parents is from here now. Have you even visited that place that you're from? No? You're from here now. Now, what that means doesn't mean that you have to behave a certain type of way, because the good thing about being from here, from America, is that we actually are like a melting pot. We actually are from so many different backgrounds, and we're so multicultural that whatever you decide to do is good. If you want to embrace the side of you that's from Africa, that is amazing. That is a part of American culture. If you want to embrace the side of you that may have been Native American, that's good. That is American culture. If you want to embrace the side of you that's from whatever state you're from, that's good, because that is America. Like, we don't have to behave in this weird monolith way. The idea of assimilation doesn't mean that you have to behave differently. And quite frankly, if you were born here, the idea of assimilation is insulting and should be insulting to you. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to assimilate into how you behave because you don't like me. Like, if I change my behavior, you're still not going to like me, so who cares? You get what I'm saying? And then there is there's the situation where, you know, you just have to be safe, because like raising kids in today's world is honestly a little terrifying. Like, little girls get kidnapped all the time. They get kidnapped broad daylight. I know from where I used to live, there was a girl that was like a teenager. I think she might have been like 13, 14 years old, who got stabbed at 3 p.m. at a bus stop. Like, literally, for no reason. Like, she didn't even know the people who did it. This world is a crazy place. I've seen videos online of people walking with their kids through the streets, and then like random adults just stabbing the children. Like, it is such a scary thought and idea. And I can see why some parents become super overprotective, because they're afraid for their children. They're afraid of their little girls getting raped. They're afraid of their little girls getting kidnapped. Nobody really gives a fuck about their little boys getting kidnapped or raped. But I think that's another topic that is of its own issues and else. But, you know, just being afraid for my kids in general. And I know that's like a common idea, especially for the fathers of little girls, where it's just like, I don't, I have to be afraid for your safety when you're dumb enough to just go with whoever. I have to be afraid for your safety when you become a teenager and you just start being like, oh, someone offers you some money, maybe you'll go. Or putting yourself in really stupid situations. I have to be afraid for when you go off to college and being careful and mindful about who you drink and do things around and who you hang out with. And yet again, as like a black person, I have to be afraid for your interactions with law enforcement, because the people who are supposed to keep you and us safe may not necessarily do that. For whatever reason, they might decide that you are the threat that they were called to stop, even if you're the one who called them. And it's too many times where we have seen people get the cops called on them for no apparent reason, or have guns thrown in their faces when they're the ones who called the cops. Yeah, I get it and I understand. The cops just show up to situations, they don't know what's going on. But if you see a really panicked person who might be bleeding, like, your first idea shouldn't be, hey, everybody pull out their guns. We don't know what's going on. Until we figure it out, we're pulling out our guns. But, you know, security, I get it. Trust me, I really do get it. And I don't approve. I just don't. I know for a fact there are other ways to de-escalate situations than a gun. I also know that guns are one of the least effective ways of de-escalating a situation, because you're asking untrained people who are now, if they weren't scared for their life, are scared for their life now, to behave in ways that you can easily predict. And if anyone in any form of security should know, a person who is in fear of their life does not necessarily behave in ways that you will predict. Simple as that. And you can protect yourself without, like, protecting yourself can really be as simple as not letting a person get too close to you. Don't let a person get to your back. Like, I've shown up in way too many situations where everything was crazy and I didn't have to pull out a weapon to get control of the situation. If you can honestly just get everyone to stop doing whatever they're doing, you can literally figure out the situation from there. And honestly, I don't necessarily have a problem with putting like handcuffs and zip ties on people until you figure out the situation. Just don't threaten their fucking lives in order to do it. You know what I'm saying? And then we come to like the part where I'm the most concerned with, which is their future. Like, what's their education gonna look like? Right now, school is looking like it's only gonna get more and more expensive just to go to school to get a piece of paper. I can sincerely tell you, as a fairly well-educated person, it's not always worth it. It's simply not always worth it. And the idea of if you go to college, you're going to have a future doesn't always make sense. And honestly, if you can do your career, if you can do what you want to do without going to school, honestly, I think that you'd be better off without the debt. Then you have options of going to the military, going to trade school, like all these things, which honestly shouldn't even be remotely on my mind right now. But if I think that my kid may want to go to an Ivy League school, well, even though I don't have to think about it now, when it comes time to prep school and stuff and going to elementary school, getting them into a good private school would probably be the best bet. I know that my wife wants our kids to go to a private school because she believes that the education is better. And in most instances, she's right. The education is better. So then it becomes finding a good private school that they'll be good, that they'll actually thrive in. And then we have to go like what their future career might be. Like, yet again, not something that you really have to think about now, but whether your kid wants to be a doctor, a lawyer, a mechanic, a soldier, a stripper, like that, all these are literal career options for your child. And I know that we like to pretend like there are only good career options out there for your kid. And when raising our kids, that's what we aim for. We aim for the good careers where you want your kid to be studying hard and become a doctor someday or become a lawyer. I mean, those seem like really shitty jobs to me that are really high in stress. I mean, you get a lot of hot prestige and money, but you also get saddled with a lot of debt. And if you make a mistake, you could lose your license. Like, it's so much more going into each and every career than you think about. But these are just some of the things that I've been thinking about, that I think about as my kid is on the way here. And, you know, I think that'll do for today. That'll do for our conversation around fatherhood. If you have any questions, have any words of encouragement, have any topics that you want me to cover specifically, send me an email at judgementalaf@gmail.com, or, hit us up on Instagram. There are plenty of links on the description below for my Instagram and Twitter handle. Reach out to me. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those good things, and share this with your friends. So let's continue the conversation. Have a great one. Bye.